Have you ever witnessed the most powerful leaders in Europe running away? Not walking out in protest, not leaving diplomatically, but literally fleeing. That is exactly what happened today. It is an image that could mark the end of an era, an image of total defeat. Ursula von der Leyen, pale as a ghost, her hands trembling. Chancellor hopeful, Friedrich Merz, visibly nervous, eyes glued to the floor, wishing he could turn invisible. Behind them, a roaring parliament and a man at the podium who just triggered the political earthquake of the year, Viktor Orbán. What happened in those few minutes that caused two of the West's most influential politicians to lose their composure completely? Was it fear? Was it sheer panic over a revelation that could bring the entire EU house of cards crashing down? The cameras captured everything, yet the mainstream media is already trying to spin the context. They call it a clash. We call it the flight from reality. Orbán didn't just speak, he settled the score. And the moment Merz and von der Leyen hastily gathered their files and rushed out of the hall, while the Hungarian's voice still boomed through the speakers, says more than 1,000 diplomatic phrases ever could. They didn't want to hear what he had to say. Or rather, they didn't want you to hear it. Stay tuned. We are now analysing exactly what triggered this panic reaction. This is no longer about politics. It is about the sheer survival of the establishment. To understand the magnitude of this moment, we must look at the time. It was exactly 10:14 a.m. in the Strasbourg plenary hall. The atmosphere wasn't just tense, it was toxic. Usually the European Parliament is a place of cultivated boredom where technocrats vote on vacuum cleaner standards. But today, there was electricity in the air. Viktor Orbán took the podium, not as a petitioner, but as a prosecutor. He started calmly, almost too calmly. But then he put the numbers on the table. Numbers that must have hit Friedrich Merz and Ursula von der Leyen like whip cracks. The accusation: you have betrayed this continent. Orbán did not speak in metaphors. He named names. He confronted the Commission President directly with her track record. Madam President, he thundered, your so-called Green Deal is not a plan for the future. It is the suicide note of European industry. He cited internal reports that the mainstream media loves to sweep under the rug. Collapse of industrial production, minus 12% in Germany alone in the last quarter. Energy prices, 3 times higher than in the USA, forcing giants like BASF and Volkswagen to close plants and slash thousands of jobs. The migration lie. While Brussels celebrates the Migration Pact as a success, Orbán presented the Frontex data, a 40% increase in illegal border crossings compared to the previous year. You are not protecting the borders, he shouted. You are merely managing the decline. That was the moment Friedrich Merz became restless. The CDU leader, who likes to portray himself as a tough opposition leader back home in Germany, sat here shoulder to shoulder with the architect of this policy. Orbán was exposing the double standards of the European People's Party, EPP, in real time. Merz couldn't applaud, but he couldn't object without humiliating his own party colleague, von der Leyen. He was trapped. The turning point, the Pfizer files, and corruption. But the mood tipped over completely when Orbán changed the subject. Transparency, or rather the lack thereof. He looked Ursula von der Leyen straight in the eye and asked the question that has been hanging in the room for years. Where are the text messages, Mrs. von der Leyen? Where are the contracts for 35 billion euros with Pfizer? A gasp went through the hall. Manfred Weber, the EPP group leader, turned red and gestured wildly at the Parliament president to cut off Orbán's microphone. But Orbán kept speaking. He listed the corruption scandals in Brussels. He spoke of Qatargate, of suitcases full of cash found with socialist MPs, and asked, "And you want to lecture Hungary on the rule of law?" He described the EU leadership as a political cartel that hates national sovereignty and criminalizes criticism as hate speech. "You are afraid of the people," Orbán said, "and that is why you are afraid of the truth." The flight, an image of disgrace. Orbán wasn't finished yet. He was just about to speak on the Ukraine war and the failed sanctions policy, a topic where Merz is particularly vulnerable as he constantly calls for even more weapons and escalation. Friedrich Merz leaned over to Ursula von der Leyen, a brief whisper. Von der Leyen, whose face had turned to stone, nodded hastily. Both stood up simultaneously. It was not a dignified exit. It was frantic. Merz grabbed his papers. A sheet fell to the floor. He left it there. Von der Leyen stared straight ahead, avoiding any eye contact with the podium or the cameras. They strode down the centre aisle toward the exit. Behind them, Orbán's booming voice calling after them, "You can leave the hall, but you cannot escape history." Laughter from the sovereignist and conservative ranks. Boos from the Greens and Socialists trying to drown out the noise. But the image was set. Germany's future chancellor candidate and the president of the European Commission fleeing a political debate. The political analysis. Why this is a catastrophe for Merz. Why is this scene so explosive? Exposing the firewall. In Germany, Merz tries to win back voters by spitting conservative rhetoric. But in Strasbourg, he shows his true face. He is part of the Brussels establishment. He covers for von der Leyen, no matter how disastrous her record is. His flight signals weakness, not strength. Fear of debate. A strong leader would have stayed seated. He would have taken notes. He would have gone to the podium afterward and dismantled Orbán with arguments. That Merz runs away is an admission that he has no counter-arguments. He knows energy prices are too high. He knows migration is out of control. He has no solutions, so he chooses flight. The signal to Europe. The Merz-von der Leyen duo stands for the status quo, for more of the same. In this narrative, Orbán stands for the rupture, for the rebellion against an out-of-touch elite. By leaving, they unintentionally confirm Orbán's thesis, that the elite has lost touch with reality and can no longer tolerate criticism. This was not a protest walkout. This was a capitulation on live camera. They didn't leave the parliament because they had better things to do. They left because they could no longer bear the reflection of their own failure. This image will remain. When history looks back on these years, this moment will be symbolic. Two of Europe's most powerful heads turning their backs because they cannot handle the confrontation. We must ask ourselves an honest question. Is this the defensive democracy they always talk about? If a German chancellor candidate and an EU Commission President flee from mere words, how do they intend to face real threats? How do they plan to negotiate with Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, or Xi Jinping if they lose their nerve with Viktor Orbán? He who leaves the room has given up the debate. He who gives up the debate admits he has no arguments left. Friedrich Merz wanted to demonstrate strength, but he showed the world only one thing, that the firewall has cracks and nerves in Brussels are frayed.